Good evening and welcome to the Tramway building, which is where Scottish Ballet lives. And I've spent most of today watching rehearsals for A Streetcar Named Desire. So welcome to this wonderful webcast. It's a fantastic facility that Scottish Ballet offers to everyone all over the world, in fact. And if you have any questions that you would like to bring to us during this wonderful webcast, we're live on Facebook and Twitter. So please follow us on @ScottishBallet or use the hashtag #SBStreetcar. The Artistic Director of Scottish Ballet has done something extraordinary in inviting theatre director and his choreographer to make a wonderful 3-act ballet of Streetcar. And I'm delighted that Ashley Page, the Artistic Director of Scottish Ballet, is here. And he's going to tell us a little bit about how the project began. Ashley.
Good evening, Morag. I've always wanted to try this experiment of working with a theatre director leading on a project for the company, working closely with the choreographer, of course. And I first saw Nancy's work before I became artistic director of this company back in 2001 on an American tour. I was on with the Royal Ballet in Washington. It was at the Kennedy Center. And it was a production of The Mill on the Floss, which was an adaptation of a George Eliot novel that Nancy's company Shared Experience was performing. And it struck me how movement was used in a specific way to enhance the undercurrents in the narrative. There would be passages where the narrative, the dialogue would stop, and a sound or music would come in, and the action would be suspended, but then continue in a purely physical way. And it struck me that this is something that could be done with dance to a much greater level. So I kind of pondered this for a while, and as the company here in Glasgow developed, I started to feel that the time was right to maybe try this experiment. So I met Annabelle. I invited Annabelle along with a series of other people to be part of the choreographic workshop 2 years ago, so February, March 2010. And I felt from the work that Annabelle produced in the workshop that she might be the ideal choreographer to be allied to a theatre director, having worked in theatre with theatre companies and actors as well as dancers herself. So I introduced Nancy and Annabelle and threw in a few ideas, and quickly, and Nancy will probably tell you about this in a minute, quite quickly we came to the conclusion that Streetcar would be a good thing to pursue, but we did look at other things first.
I think it's very trailblazing actually for an artistic director to do that, especially an artistic director who's also a choreographer, because you're understanding that there may be moments in choreography that don't go far enough in terms of narration and characterization, and I think that's an extraordinary thing that Scottish Ballet has done, and I really applaud you for it, actually, for taking that step. I'd also like to put a face to some of the names that you've just said, and I should have introduced the panel straight away. I'm so sorry, I was a bit excited. So the lady at the end here, this is Annabelle Lopez Ochoa. She is the choreographer that Ashley was speaking about just now, who's been chosen to make the dance steps for Streetcar. And then next to her is Nancy Meckler, who is a theatre director that Ashley was just talking about also. All of these people are going to join the discussion. They're not just here for decoration. And then there's Tama, who's decorative as well. And he's going to play Stanley in the first cast of Streetcar Named Desire. And then the fabulous Mutso, who's sitting next to me, and she is going to play Blanche Dubois. So I would like, if I may, just to ask Nancy a question, actually, to start with. Sure. I was just wondering, when Ashley initially suggested the idea of coming in to work with dance and work with ballet, whether you had any caution or any second thoughts about it. It's a very unusual thing for a theatre director to be
Well,
on.
it was certainly very surprising.
Uh-huh.
And yes, of course one would feel cautious because I have never really worked with dancers before. Although I did work on I did direct a film that was about a dance company, so I felt I had a very good introduction in a way.
What film was that?
It's a film called Alive and Kicking, and it was all about dance company. So I met quite a few dancers then, because we had dancers working on the film. But because with my company Shared Experience, I've always been so interested in the extent to which you can express things without words. And we have worked in that way quite a bit, but without dancers. So for me, it suddenly felt like it would be rather wonderful that you'd be able to explore things with people who can go so much further physically. Particularly when you're working with actors, the one thing you really miss is the moment when you want somebody to go up in the air, or you want somebody to be lifted. And it's such a chore for actors to try to achieve something like that. So it's been fantastic for me that, you know, you could just say, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if so-and-so went up in the air, and up they go, you know. It's second nature to all these people. So for me, it felt like it was an extension of something I have been doing for quite a while, and a great privilege, really, to have the chance.
What would you say is the main kind of difference, immediate difference, when you're in the studio with the difference between actors and dancers, apart from the obvious thing like physicality and being able to go up in the air? Is there anything about the mindset of a dancer and an actor which is very different?
Well, I think, interestingly, I think that dancers are so incredibly positive. I think they really have to be in order to survive, probably, in the profession. So that you don't feel that you get a lot. What you can get often with actors is, oh, I feel too anxious about this, or I don't feel prepared, or I feel confused, or, you know, and it's very exhausting because you feel like saying, oh, just do it, just think, don't think so much. But actors feel they have the right to be confused in their research and everything, whereas dancers are just so keen to really understand what you're talking about and go for it 100%. And I find that really refreshing, I have to say.
You hear that, guys? You're not allowed now to do any of those things that you just said. And have you taken the inspiration from the film or the play, or both, or neither, actually?
Well, I directed the play many years ago, so it's still sort of in my psyche somewhere. And of course, the film, you know, I had seen the film, although I didn't really watch it that carefully again. It has so many iconic moments in it. Because I was really keen that Annabelle and I should really be able to create something that really was a ballet of A Streetcar Named Desire, rather than an attempt to put a play or a film on stage. I think it's really important, if you're working in another medium, that you just say, this isn't the film and it's not the play. It's inspired by those things. But that if you're making ballet, you should really feel like you can take off from it, that the play is almost, and the film are almost like a launching pad and an inspiration, rather than something you're trying to serve or copy.
And it's exactly from what you're saying right there that I understand why the choice was made by Ashley, actually, is your understanding of how that could come together and that could work in such a positive way without making any probably compromises. In fact, quite the opposite. And I wonder if both of you, Annabelle and Nancy, if you could talk a little bit about how you prepared to work together. Was there a...
Go on.
It was in your house. So.
It was in my house, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we met a year ago in London for a week, and we decided to take the book and see how chronologically all the events were happening, because we realized that in dance there's no past tense, you can't have, and then there was, and then it happened. So we had to make a scheme of all the events. And in that week, during that week, we went to see some shows and performances, and we found out that we had actually the same taste. So that was really welcome information about each other. And then I think we set that really in a
created a scenario.
In a very sketchy way. Yeah. And then I think 6 months later we met again, and then we decided to, we revised the entire script and said how many minutes would be at each scene, and did we forget some details, how we're going to explain that suddenly he gets a phone call from Laurel, so we had to find other images for that, and that's how.
So in that case, it's a kind of technical, scenographic kind of way of looking at the piece, but I'm very interested to know whether both of you saw the character, because you're both very different people from different backgrounds, and you will have seen them at different times in your lives, this play, this film. So did you both see the characters in the same way, or was there a very different way that you both interpreted the main characters in the film and the play?
Well, I think think you end up talking about the characters a lot, really, when you're trying to create a scenario. You talk about what drives the characters, you talk about what is it about that character that really interests you for this particular scenario. And I think it was just probably lucky that we had very similar ideas and taste and that we weren't in conflict about it. You know, it was more of a thing of saying, these are the sorts of things, or I would say these are the sorts of things I think we really have to emphasize about Stanley. And we weren't in a situation where Annabelle was saying, no, I think we should be emphasizing something else. You know, it seemed to come together quite easily. I think if it hadn't, we probably wouldn't have really been able to carry on.
Yeah, I was just interested in whether you gave each other additional nuances to the characters that you already knew, but I think that you were already quite deeply in there. Yes, I think you must have, otherwise it wouldn't have become such an interesting creative partnership in the way it has. Annabelle, how did you prepare for the rehearsal period?
Well, I usually don't prepare too much because I've come across during all the time that I've been choreographing that the more I prepare, if I prepare steps, then I get stuck in the studio, literally. So I prepare myself to be completely open and to improvise, and therefore I shouldn't be I shouldn't feel anguish, and I also prepare to open myself to suggestions from the dancers. And I knew that for Blanche, I wanted that character to be on pointe shoes and very genteel the whole way through, and that for Stanley, obviously, not on pointe shoes, but much more grounded in his movements, and for Stella, I wanted more voluptuous, natural movements.
And you listen to the music a lot beforehand?
Yes, but not as in counting the bars. I don't do that.
Just
it's
to
just
give you a
that
sense of
it gets me
atmosphere.
a mood, and I guess our composer also really set a certain build-up in each scene that is very easy to follow. So I knew already before I come into the studio that this is the build-up, probably. And in some scenes he really had like every second, like at 1 minute and 12, Stanley comes in and he does that, and we had to sometimes also go away from that because
I can imagine that you don't want to be tied into that kind of.
But for many scenes he was actually right, and maybe it's because he's worked so much for films and television, so he knows how people move around and how much it takes to go through emotions and to go to another action.
So do you feel that your choreography then is like a kind of a journey through a soundscape rather than thinking about it representing the music as some choreographers would do?
Yeah, for each scene, the music is mainly filmic.
Yeah.
For each scene is different. So I have some train scene, a crowd scene that's really on counts because I have 16 people moving at the same time. But usually I'm much more intuition. I follow my intuition when I go with the music. I don't put it on music.
I'm interested that Blanche is on point because, yes, it's very genteel, but it's also quite vulnerable as well. There's a kind of teetering that happens if you're on point. So I can imagine her coming across as kind of quite brittle if she was on point and a little bit on the edge of her toes, in fact. Thank you. Tama and Andy, I've seen you this afternoon a little bit in rehearsal. And I can't believe that you were up there like 20 minutes ago, and I look at you sitting so relaxed and beautiful. I was just wondering if you could give us a dancer's perspective on the kind of process that you've been through and how it feels about the kind of emotional depth of the characters that sometimes in ballet, particularly classical ballet, you might not get a chance to plumb the depths of such a psychosis and neurosis and that dark side so much. So Tama, how did it feel to have such an iconic kind of character to work with?
I think amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, firstly, amazing. You don't get this kind of character very often as a dancer. Especially, I think, we were really lucky to work with both Nancy and Annabelle because having two people's input into it, two same view as they've said, but two very different avenues to come at it was really good because I feel I've been able to build a much more rounded character than I possibly would have on my own steam, absolutely. And also they had such a strong idea of where the character was going, and if I sort of started veering off the wrong way, they were very aware of where to take it. So I found that really good, but the character itself is fantastic. It's so complex and so interesting. especially to play a character that can so easily be hated, but at the same time you've got to try and find something that the audience cares about. They need to care for this character for them to care about the situation that this character embodies. So all of that is so difficult to do in dance and so difficult to do in steps. And the other thing that I thought was great is that we've taken any kind of ballet mime or any of those sort of classical nuances out and tried to do it completely through standing or movement or how we look at each other or where we place objects in the space and things like that, which I think has been a really interesting process because it's given me certainly something I can take forward into future works because it was a complete learning experience. And I think that's as well been one of the great things is that I've managed to, gather so much new information in this process as well.
The thing with Stanley, isn't it, is that he's incredibly territorial. And so I suppose the audience can relate to that as a kind of vulnerable part of him, is that all he's trying to do is hold it together in his territory. No matter how kind of ghastly and squalid it is, it's still his.
Absolutely. It's what he can make of the world, of his world, and it's not through lack of trying to make it better. That's all he can get at the time, being an immigrant, being all of these things kept him in a place. And so he had to try and create his power in different areas by being aggressive towards, people or fights at bowling alleys and stuff. That was his way of holding his world. So absolutely, he had to keep his territory. That was all he had, essentially.
So are you going to make us like you as Stanley?
Hopefully.
Very confusing.
I don't know whether I want to make you like me, but I want that you have sympathy.
Yeah.
You need to care about him because he's not one-dimensional character. There's a reason why he's the way he is and the things he does.
Eve, Blanche cares for Stanley, or does she? And how does it feel for you as he's an icon, so Blanche Du Bois is an incredible female icon, certainly not very feminist, but certainly female. How do you feel about playing her?
She's such a complicated character, and I couldn't be happier to play her. I think she's quite scared to realize that trying to escape from all this passion and past, she finds herself in her sister's flat and she's attracted to her husband. So from then on, I think she's trying to start a new beginning, trying to feel like there is hope for her to survive in the world. She's very fragile, very sensitive character, and it's almost impossible for her to function. So you can see her struggle quite a bit, and Stanley isn't making it very easy. And there's all sorts of distractions and attractions. So
she's also, isn't she, very self-destructive, almost in a kind of Amy Winehouse kind of way. She's an addict. She's addicted to alcohol. She's an alcoholic. So there's this whole kind of fragility inside her, and physically she needs something to give her strength, isn't it?
Yeah, she's that past haunts her quite a bit. It takes over her life. She's so very sad and broken by the fact that she made a mistake in her youth. And as they say, past is the present, and she can't escape it. It keeps coming back, and more she gets into the darker places, the more it takes over her life, and eventually she does make a decision of going to dreamland, because it is impossible to function in a reality for her.
And does the dreamland also have shadows in it?
Definitely, yeah. But there's a tiny little hope still, which she kind of reaches towards.
Okay.
But I guess that keeps her going a bit away.
We could have a look at you actually in action in the studio, which I'm so looking forward to. And I think that you guys are going to talk over and give us a little narrative as things go along.
Yeah.
Yeah? Let's see. Are we ready to go?
This footage is taken in probably first few weeks.
Yeah, the
Interim.
choreography is so different now.
It is. But that is Blanche's first solo, where she is looking a bit like a moth
It has lots of very preachy moments. She's attracted by light, and also she does get too close to the light, which will burn her. So
what you don't see here is that she's going to be dancing under a light bulb, and that's why she's all the time looking at it and reaching for it.
And it's inspired by the fact that Tennessee Williams almost called the play The Moth, so that's where we got the image from.
she's a very curious character, at least at that stage of the ballet, and almost probably wonders if she can survive in the world, with the world.
Does she wants to go towards the light even though she knows it's going to burn?
Yeah.
That's a really great metaphor for her journey in general, isn't it?
Exactly. She hasn't made a mistake yet, but you can see she's not the most secure person.
And these people walking, are they phantoms or are they real people?
Society
Is this a street
mostly.
scene?
The chorus, we of course we wanted to make a full-length ballet for the entire company, so we came up with an idea how to use the entire company as a chorus.
Tama, there seems to be someone who's very fond of you.
Absolutely. This is a scene from the beginning of Act 2, and it's the opening of Act 2, and it's Stella and I. She's just woken up, and I'm having a coffee before work. And what this shows really well is the creation of a scene. So something as simple as where you put a glass, how you put a glass around someone, what that means. In this, how you touch someone's hand. It's all thought about and all connected and choreographed, and nothing's left to chance. You can see that even, do you put your neck back, put your neck forward, how is Sophie on my body? The whole thing has to be connected. And here you can see like not everything works either, you know, you've got to try different things.
And then, of course, when you change one movement, then it's going to affect all the rest.
Affects all
So
the
you're
others.
sitting in one position and you use a different arm, then it changes in the body completely, and so then it becomes another piece of choreography, right?
Absolutely. And it's got to, in the end, tell a message. It's got to tell a story.
It was wonderful to see you dance, and so the emotional depth of the characters that we've already talked about, which is wonderful to hear. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you guys haven't talked about yet that you feel that's part of this whole production, this whole experience that you're having.
Want to talk a bit about the design?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Choice.
yes, I mean, I think one of the things that really released us when we were trying to come up with a scenario was when we suddenly thought maybe we shouldn't try to think so literally about, you know, this is a couple that live in New Orleans and they've got an apartment and it's got 2 bedrooms, and that maybe we should try to think of everything much more metaphorically. And so we started thinking, what if we saw the whole piece as a battle between Blanche's character and Stanley's character as to who is going to finally get Stella, as if Stella is the prize in between these two. And that if we tried to think of it that way, then we need to be on a battleground. And if we need to be on a battleground, maybe we need to perform it in a very rough space. So while we were creating the scenario, we kept saying we're in a rough space. We kept imagining a disused train yard, which would just be, well, a little bit like probably looking outside the window of the tramway. And but then when we were working with when I was working with the designer, Nikki Turner, and I said, you know, we really want a rough space, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like a disused train yard. She came up with the idea of what if it looked like a station, an abandoned railway station, which is something that has a great sort of poetic resonance, you know, because it's about journeys, and it's about, if it's abandoned, then it's about the past, and it's also, train stations often are a place for having dreams of changing your life, and going from one place to another. So she's created a set which, it's very, very suggestive, because we don't want it to be too dominant an image, but it does feel, it is an abandoned train station. And so then we realized that all the furniture and everything could just be part of whatever you would find in a place like that. We talked about abandoned crates, using lots of crates. And then Nikki had a great idea, which was that if we put all the crates together and made a wall of crates, maybe we could have a huge image on the crates of the beautiful southern mansion that Blanche leaves behind from her childhood.
And then, of course, it had fallen apart, so you need to disassemble it as well. And
yes.
It sort of disassembles in
it disassembles during the show, yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So
and I think a train station as well is a place where you would always, well, sometimes rely on the kindness of strangers, which is one of the taglines, I think, from the movie. But right now, I'm not going to rely on the kindness of strangers, but of Emma Jane. And Emma Jane has been, is live now and taking questions on Twitter and Facebook and online. Have you got at least one, I hope?
We do, Morag, yes. Absolutely. I think it's a Facebook question, but a lot of people trending, well, not trending, but talking about it. So there's a lot of excitement out there, so it's great. Okay, so this is from Esther, and she's really interested in how do dancers have a different way to connect to characters compared to actors?
Is this a question for a choreographer? Or
Yeah, I think for Nancy, really. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't sure about that, but I think the truth is that when you're working with actors, actors all work so differently anyway. You know, they have different ways of feeling connected. And I found that when I offered the way I thought about characters to these dancers, they were very receptive to it. So I didn't feel that it was that foreign, but I don't know. I don't know. Did it feel foreign to you, the way I was talking to you about character? Or?
I don't think so. I think it felt quite natural. I think we normally talk about character quite similarly, I guess.
Yes.
I think
surprisingly not that different.
Yeah.
you insisted of thinking what was your must, what was your...
What is your want?
What is
yes,
your want?
talking about
That
what is
was-
your
That's
want.
very different.
Yeah,
That is
Yeah,
different
that-
because we've been normally giving the steps, so you have to work around the steps, but now we were working around our
Intentions
desire.
and desires and wants, yes. I mean, that's something that I always use when I'm working with actors, but what I found was that when I did ask them to think about that, they were very good at it. So maybe they aren't asked that often, but when they were asked, they could do it really well. You know, they were really able to concentrate in the right kind of way, to be able to play what is your want, what is your need, what is your desire.
And then choreographically, Annabelle would be, I'm sure, taking it into the physical as well, so that the character isn't just coming out in your face and in the naturalistic movements and dramatic movements, but it has to be there in every movement that you're making, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well I'm sure that's answered Esther's question. Sure, she's delighted with that. We've got some wonderful students from Annie's Land College here with us this evening. So our first question is from Nikki. Nikki, here you go.
How will you portray these difficult matters into a dance form? Is it vocabulary classical, or is it contemporary?
It's a mix of both. I wanted to keep the character of Blanche on point shoes, and so lighter and classical, and all the other characters are quite contemporary. So all the chorus is only on point shoes when they're the family in Belle Reve, and the rest of the piece is either jazz, because we have some jive, or contemporary.
Okay, next we have Chloe Jane. Here we go, Chloe.
Hi. What are you looking for in your dancers so that they can portray the strong persona of the characters?
What are you looking for?
No, I think that Nancy was really looking, casting. It was almost like a movie. She was casting, she looked in the dancer, in their personality, if they were close to that character. And well, there's a certain physicality about everybody, and of course, Luke, for example, not a dancer, who's a very good dancer, would not be a Stanley.
You didn't have the physique. Yes. Sometimes
so
you're looking for
sometimes
you look at the physique.
Physiques and
Yes.
the way they move.
But actually, I mean, we did spend time with the dancers that we thought might be playing the roles, and we did lots of exercises with them. where we were doing a kind of improvisation, where they were working with the basic desires or wants of that character, so that we could just see how they could, how far they could take it. That we had 3 days when we were here where we were doing these exercises with the dancers, and that helped us to see who could play Blanche, who could play Stella, that sort of thing. It's pretty difficult to just know. You have to audition or do exercises or something to sort of glean what qualities people can bring to it.
Okay, and lastly we've got Stephanie. Okay, Stephanie.
Do you find it difficult to translate script into movement?
To translate script into movement? Well, I think because we decided that we weren't worrying about the text so much as thinking of it as an inspiration. I think this is the story, but we can tell it the way we want to tell it. We don't, because it's going to be a ballet, we don't have to say, well, he said this, how are we going to get that into movement? And once you free yourself, it makes it much easier.
And I think we try to see in each scene what is important in that scene. Why are there all these words there? Is it about territorium? Is it about the desire to someone? There's a lot. And so we try to take the essence of each scene and make our own scene about it.
And we have a lot of scenes that are not in the play, and they are not in the film. In the play, they talk about going to the bowling alley, but they don't go to a bowling alley, and we do. We have a lot of scenes which are really going on inside Blanche's head. And in the film and in the play, you would only get a small mention of that. Whereas in the ballet, you can fully see and hear what's going on in her head. So it lends itself hugely to just opening it up rather than trying to copy it.
Which was one of the reasons you chose it as a subject.
Yes, because as a play, it lent itself to that. If you have a main character whose fantasy life is so strong and who's so haunted by memories, and she can only talk about them, it's fantastic to have ballet and think, well, every time she has a memory and she's haunted, we can see it and hear it. It's a gift.
Do you have anything else from online?
Yes, we do. We've got a question about the very famous scene where Stanley shouts,
Stella.
Stella. Exactly. How, with dance being a non-verbal communication, how do you
You
portray
say
that?
to the dancer,
Yeah.
come on, shout Stella.
Yeah.
Guess what? He does it really, really well. He does it really well. Yeah, it's fantastic. No, we didn't know whether the dancers could do it, but Annabelle just said, come on, we're going to have a go. And 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's so fantastic. Can I just say what a joy it is to be, I sometimes do chair other dance discussions, and sometimes it's very difficult to get a creative team to talk about what they're doing. It's not a normal situation. Most people like this live in the studio most of the time, and it's just been an absolute joy, really. Thank you so much for being so articulate, and thank you, Ashley, for having the vision to put together a team like this as well. I'm very excited about Streetcar Named Desire, and I hope everyone who's watching this, and also all the people that are in this room, will come to see it often. Thank you.
Thank you.